I think you know a bit about the program. We were so happy, Carol and I, that Tim de Haan agreed to be a keynote speaker today on the sea in UNESCO, culture, legacy. We were going to do a brief presentation following on from Tim, which I will try and do with different twist. But we'll start with Tim because it's so important what he has to say. We'll give it just a very short bio because you're a historian with a particular interest in 20th century, and perhaps also this century, architecture, and you started your career in the archives of Rotterdam, then moved on to the National Archives, and 4 years ago you found UNESCO as your next destination, and we're very happy that you did.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being here. Such an honor. And I remember a warm, sunny summer day in 2022, just before the summer holidays started, and I was invited by Joke and by Carolina Montessori at the Montessori Association Internationale to talk about their documentary heritage of the association, which they were taking care of. And in the former house of Maria Montessori, where we walked up the stairs, and I wasn't completely aware of that before entering the building, we ended up at the study. An excellent cake was being served, and we sat in the old chairs where Maria Montessori undoubtedly also spent her time. And when Carolina and Joke talked me through the documentary heritage taken care of by the association, they illustrated it by several documents, and some of them came directly from the closet in the room. And I don't know if you ever had it, but it's, I think, what we call in heritage field a historical sensation, the sense that you're almost in touch with the past, like you open a room with Maria Montessori's study and the objects that was literally the door to the past. And today I would like to talk to you about the importance of such rooms, of course in a metaphorical way. So let me first start you with UNESCO. That's where I work for, and that's and what their purpose and goal is. And since war began in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. And the motto of UNESCO, therefore, is without any doubt building peace in the minds of men and women. Lately, you can see they added women to the motto. It's talked in the early days only of men, but I'm sure and afraid it's quite adequate, and most wars are being started by men. Anyway, UNESCO needs to be seen in the context of the aftermath of World War II, with large parts of the world in shambles, and there was a strong urge of never again such a war, such destruction. So world leaders started working and building on a new international multilateral institutions like the United Nations after the League of Nations failed to work. But with the focus of the UN more on international law, on human rights, people were aware that with the start of Minds in the Men, working on legal frameworks isn't going to be enough. You need to do more and have a greater ambition on that part of mankind, what defines us: education, science, and I think above all, culture. You just can read the acronym already between the lines. So, the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, and where it started in its founding with less than 40 member states, we now have 194 member states or associated member states being part of the organization. Now and then, member state drops out, but luckily they often return. Recently, we could welcome the United States of America back as a member, which is nice for the support and the legitimacy of the organization, but UNESCO also relies on membership fees, so from that perspective, the return of the USA was also good news. And every member state is obliged to the UNESCO Constitution to have a national UNESCO commission, a bit of a pendulum between UNESCO Paris, where the mother organization is, and where is happening a lot. Plans, ideas, policies, recommendations, and the focus of the priorities from the member states towards UNESCO Paris, who are a bit in between. Yeah, there it is. And I think it's important to realize that UNESCO is big, with different programs, projects, lists, prizes, conferences, and so on. It feels a little bit like a constellation, and since I would love to show the roof of the IJsselmeer Planetarium in the north of the Netherlands, in Frisia, Franeker, added last year as the 13th World Heritage Site in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. I especially announced the Kingdom of the Netherlands because Willemstad, Curaçao, one of our Caribbean lands, is also, the downtown there is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But back to the picture of the roof, it's still working and remarkably precise representation of our solar system in the, as they know it, in the 18th century with all the then known planets. And it was made by an amateur astronomer, IJsselmeer, at the end of the 18th century to prove that the world wasn't going to perish if several planets were lined in one. So anyhow, it's just a great illustration about a constellation. That's also a reason why I wanted to show it. And this constellation of UNESCO represents about, in the Netherlands, represents about so-called 160 dots. Dots related to, for example, World Heritage Sites, geoparks, which are protected areas with internationally significant geology within sustainable development, which is sought and includes tourism, conservation, education and research concerning not just geology, but also other relevant sciences. And recently, the Schelde Delta was added to that international list. 2 UNESCO schools where we connect mostly secondary schools to UNESCO values, to UNESCO chairs. I believe someone, a UNESCO chair spoke this morning. Where science and applied science is connected with UNESCO domains and values and with several memory of the world items, which I want to talk about more. And we, of course, as a UNESCO constitution, prescribe with the UNESCO Commission, with, on this picture, our great chairperson, Kathleen Verrier, and also with our Minister of Education and Science. And we do have, which is quite inspiring, a youth commission. So I would like to draw you a little more in the... Thank you, yeah, one back, please. I want to draw you a little bit more into the rabbit hole of UNESCO, because probably when I would have asked you before my presentation where you know UNESCO from, I would guess perhaps a little bit because the Montessori background would be education, but I'm curious who knows, maybe I can see some hands, knows UNESCO from World Heritage. Yeah, that's quite the association we have. And that's fully understandable because the World Heritage Program is extremely successful and popular. And the history of the program lies in the international campaign to save the monuments of Nubia in 1960. You perhaps heard of it due to the construction of the Aswan Dam in the south of Egypt. The huge temple complex threatened to disappear. But thanks to the international efforts, and even more support and dedication, about 22 of the monuments of the Abu Simbel complex could be saved and could be relocated. And a major operation and global attention for this kind of heritage led in 1972 to the World Heritage Convention and the system of UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which became highly popular and prestigious, and I think the World Heritage symbol is quite an endorsement. And I don't know how it works for you, but it feels a little bit like the 3 Michelin stars worth the detour when I'm on a holiday. I always check for possible sounds around. And the success of the World Heritage Program, especially the list, led to the start over the past decades and years with all kinds of UNESCO lists that find the inspiration within the one and only original heritage list. Also, the Memory of the World Program, which started in 1992, added a list to the format of the program. And not for having a competition, but just to make people more aware of the importance of documentary heritage and its vulnerability of those various forms and expressions of this unique material for mankind. And That it can be unique and rare is this example on screen, are the Chinese bone inscriptions, the so-called oracle bone inscriptions, and they date almost back to 2 centuries before Christ and can be considered as the origins of the Chinese characters. And why it is so important, I want to this attention for documentary heritage to the memory of the world. A few years ago, we made a small animation which sums it up quite clear, and I would like to show it to you right now.
Who would we be without our memory? Memories shape our identity, enabling us to make sense of the daily stream of incoming information and helping us to navigate the world we live in. Our collective memory reflects who we are together as people and can help us to understand and navigate the present. For example, nowadays climate change researchers can use 17th century shipping journals to determine past global temperatures, and this way better predict future trends. Through the ages, we've produced an enormous amount of information, stored in a variety of ways. Together, this forms our documentary heritage. But serious action is needed, or else time will take its inevitable toll. So, how do we do that? Making sure we preserve the original unaltered documents, and working closely together with governments and private partners. The UNESCO Memory of the World Programme, a worldwide network of national committees and local archiving institutions, registering and promoting documents essential to our collective memory, and making them accessible to everyone. Often, countries jointly submit documents, while offering their own perspectives on a shared, sometimes painful past, illustrating that the program can also contribute to mutual understanding and reconciliation. Together, we're creating a global treasure trove, open for future generations to help them remember and navigate their past, present, and future.
Thank you. I come back to the slides now. Yeah, thank you. Is it working? Yeah, there it is. Okay, so just let's focus on the goals of the Memory of the World program. There are 3. It's about to facilitate preservation of the world's documentary heritage, particularly in areas affected by conflict or natural disaster. It's about enable universal access to documentary heritage worldwide. And it's about to enhance public awareness about the significance of documentary heritage among the wider public. So let's walk it through a little bit, because there are quite some challenges regarding documentary heritage. The first one is, of course, natural disaster. Documentary heritage is extremely vulnerable for this. This image is of Sint Maarten, a country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands, which lies predominantly in the hurricane area and is extremely vulnerable for this kind of natural disaster. This was during the Irma hurricane, and if containers don't hold it in the harbor, what then about papers? But we also can take a closer look to the Netherlands. I'm not sure if some of you remember the 2021 summertime. Due to extensive raining, the springs and small rivers in the south of the Netherlands, but also Belgium and Germany, rose extremely quickly and flooded in no time the villages next to them. Not only houses were struck by them, but there was also a museum in Valkenburg at the bank of the river where the ground floor was flooded in no time. And the emergency services were understandably working extremely hard, saving people, livestock, whilst the museum staff was working hard to move the artworks to higher ground. So natural disasters are not something far away. It can also strike us here. And due to climate change, it's also quite relevant to think about our physical repositories. Do they fit? What measurements have we taken? The second one is of documented heritage is that it tends to decay, sometimes even in an autonomous way. Perhaps the first example of the Chinese oracle bones wasn't the best one because it's quite durable and will tend, no matter what circumstances, to last for quite a while. And that can't be said of different types of material. If stored in the right conditions, traditional paper or even older parchment will hold it for quite a while, but for example, being exposed to the sun or too moist, it isn't going to be good for long-term life. And when you look at more recent materials, such as photos, film, or VHS, the sustainability is even getting worse. You really need to take care of it, strategies to change the medium to prevent further autonomous decay. And one of the worst examples of autonomous decay, and that may perhaps surprise you, is digital information. Digital bits and bytes are extremely vulnerable for so-called bit rot, not to mention the necessary marriage between digital information, software to read and represent it, and hardware to display it. How many versions and producers of text processing programs can you remember? Lotus, WordPerfect, Word, not to mention the different floppy disks we used to have, the 8-inch floppy, the 5.25-inch floppy, the 3.5-inch, including the different operating systems and detailed personal computers. The example you see here had the same problems. Last year it was inscripted on the International Memory of the World Register, and perhaps some of you in the Netherlands know it and recognize it. It's the Digitale Stad, the digital city, and it's a social network avant la lettre from the early 90s, a startup for Dutch digital pioneers, also responsible for the famous access role provider. And before it ended up in the register, it took quite some digital archaeology to bring this network back online again. There were 3 backups of the data from the 90s, with only one not corrupt, and only one machine was left and was able to read the specific backup, a tape backup. And then, when the bits and bytes were saved, the process of restoring the rotten ones and creating a new environment where the Digitale Stad, the digital city, could be shown. But the last one of decay and destruction is, in my opinion, the worst one. Documentary heritage affected by deliberate destruction. The examples are unfortunately vast. For example, during the Stalin period, the Crimean Tatar population was not only deported far away to the steppes of Uzbekistan, their villages were also renamed as no Tatar ever lived there. Their story, their existence destroyed. And of course, the deliberate destruction, the arson on books on the preliminary years before the start of World War II in Nazi Germany, the burning piles of writers, of knowledge, of literature, of culture is one of the most known and shocking events. And it still happens. About a year ago, the UNESCO Commission participated in an event where directors from different museums and cultural institutions from the Ukraine came to the Netherlands to share their experience on the war, to learn what strategies and especially digital opportunities were there to safeguard their heritage. And one of the directors, he was involved in libraries and book collection, told us that in the east of the Ukraine, some libraries were investigated and searched for books in Ukrainian language, and the books were picked off the shelves and were burned outside, burning book piles again. And we know that during the civil war on the Balkan, deliberately cultural locations were targeted, trying to destroy them. And why? I think the symbolic meaning of it. When you try to destroy your cultural identity, we deny your culture. We deprive you from your stories to be passed further on for future generations, because that, in my opinion, is what documentary heritage defines most, its universal value. It are the stories that we pass on, and deep down, we're still those people next and around the fireplace, passing stories on to another. First in an oral tradition, and then more and more time in different, independent of different mediums. So let's pass through a bit more hopeful slide. The impact of education. Because documentary heritage is so much more than destruction and decay. It's about telling stories, it's about teaching and learning, it's about cooperating, knowing about different perspectives. And the photo you see over here, the photos, are from a UNESCO project we're doing with documentary heritage. What you see is a part of the VOC archives, the East Indies Company, an enormous administration in the 17th and 18th century, which survived until now. But of course, the perspective is quite Western and colonialistic. So what we did and what we do is, through schools, we made the connection from the Netherlands with Indonesia and let the children work together. So the starting points were parts of the VOC archive, but the context and the stories from the school and the pupils from the Netherlands are so different and then also a bit recognizable from the Indonesian counterpart. Really inspiring, and during the making of the photo, it was a pilot, but we're now scaling it up. More examples from the Memory of the World register, especially with those where there is a sharing and common past in the world. And there are quite a lot of these examples. Ooh. So that finally, three examples of unique and complete different items from the Memory of the World register, which tell three different stories, and perhaps even more. One more famous than the other, but all unique in their own way. Let me take you on a small journey, in this case in Europe, where we start up north in Finland. So the first example you can see here on the picture is the archive of the Skolt Sami village of Suonjel. The Skolts, they are a Sami tribe whose origin can be found in the northernmost border triangle of Finland, Russia and Norway. And the uniqueness of this documentary heritage is, I guess, the semi-nomadic tribe of the Skolt Sami, who relied extensively on their fishing and their reindeer grounds, and relate to the dominant, in this case, Russian people. The Skolt Sami understood the importance of proper administration and recording of their agreements about their fishing and their herding grounds. They understood the significance of written documents, not perhaps for themselves, but for their continuation of their way of living. New agreements were added on a big roll, and they were glued with glue made from bones, which ended up finally on a 9-meter scroll, which was kept again in a casing carved from tree trunk, which was after that hidden on a place where only 3 different men knew the secret location. In a period over 200 years almost, the scroll was in use, and during World War II, the scroll went adrift, but in 2012 it was returned to the community, so it can tell its story from within the community. The second story is quite a well-known one. It's one of the first inscriptions of the Netherlands in the Memory of the World register, and it are the diaries of Anne Frank. Her story is well known around the world, and the diary of Anne Frank brings back her story to the attention of people all over the world. It describes her life as an adolescent girl during the 2 years she and her family and 4 other people lived hiding through World War II, and her diary is in the top 10 of one of the most read books worldwide. The diary of Anne Frank has been translated into 65 languages and published worldwide, and her story has touched people all over the world, especially young people have found a story one they can relate to. As a writer, as the writer was an adolescent also. And through the diary, young people still today can learn what the consequences of discrimination can be. Until today, the Anne Frank Stichting still receives regularly letters from young people who are inspired by her story. And a large number of the people who read the book visit the museum in Amsterdam, where they see the place where it all took place, and they see the actual diary. Over 1 million visitors per year. The diary is a highlight of the museum visit. And finally, thank you. Finally, that documentary heritage doesn't need to be big or includes a serious amount of pages to have an impact, isn't always necessary. It can also be small and quite unambiguously important. And this one, I guess, is. It's only one page. It's printed on paper, not of the best quality, but the message it contained affected quite some people worldwide. It's the telegram of Austria-Hungarian's declaration of war on Serbia on the 28th of July 1914, and it marked the beginning of the First World War, one of the world's most tragic conflicts in history of the human race. And it initiated the era of unprecedented suffering. The telegram is the unique testimony of the world's diplomacy and an internationally important document. And it fascinates me that such a small piece of paper with almost 12 small sentences ultimately plunged Europe and even more countries in 4 years of war and misery. 3 different documents, eventually documentary heritage, worth keeping and preserving, worth illustrating different stories, and I hope I gave a little bit of inspiration not only to cherish your own Montessori collection, but to preserve, preferably according to today's standards, but to use it to tell stories, to pass them through. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for these words, which we'll take to heart, and it just encourages to cherish the Montessori legacy. Thanks very much for coming and being here today.
Thank you very much.